Sometimes you just need to escape the noise. This is the story of how an interlude that was meant as an escape actually gave me much, much more. And of the 2 paintings that came out of it. It's early morning. I am staying at my friend Karen's place, who is right on the coast near Merimbula, and it's the most beautiful morning. And I'm just taking a little stroll down to the point to do some drawing, heading along this very gorgeous little trail that will take me down to the path to the point. Leading up to this, we'd had an extremely busy and intense week, dashing from one event to the next. I was grateful for the time with my family and the people I'd been with. I was also ready for some quiet, to walk, to reflect, and to let my mind settle. It is so amazing to be here, not only to be spending time with one of my oldest friends, nothing like old friends, right? But also just the scent of the bush and the peace and the quiet. I'm excited to sit down in the peace and quiet and do some drawing. But I can feel all the stress of last week just slowly and but surely falling away. It's really, really lovely. There's something about walking to the sea through the bushland in the early morning. The world becomes smaller, the sounds become clearer, and gradually you begin to arrive, not just at the beach, but also back to yourself. When I reached the beach, there was so many things to look at, and far, far more beauty and awe than I could capture in the short time that I had. When you're in a place as visually rich and beautiful as this beach is, it can be very hard to know what to draw. There's just so much information and so much beauty and so much wonder, frankly. It can be hard to know what to pinpoint. And when I get to that place, what I do is I go, I'm just going to draw whatever I see, what catches my eye, and document so that later I have the visual references that I can use to create paintings. So wandering around, I came across this rock and I just love the marks in it. Look at these beautiful marks, and I just found it so inspiring. So I started with some mark making based on these lovely patterns and shapes in the rock, and just went from there. And then just the most incredible colour. This pinky orangey sandstone is just such the most gorgeous colour. Super inspiring. So this is what I landed on for this morning. So really inspired by this rock and all the patterns and shapes and colours and textures in it. Just beautiful. I could absolutely draw here all day. Look at the amazing white patterning in this rock, and just the shapes and the forms And the colour, it's just incredible. I wasn't trying to make a finished painting in the sketchbook. I was trying to notice what the place was giving me. The colour of the stone, the rhythm of the marks, the way the light moved across the surface. Sometimes a drawing begins with a subject, and sometimes it begins with one small detail that captures your attention. Merimbula just kept offering me more and more inspiration. Later that day, we went down to the jetty, and swimming beneath it in the pale marine light was multiple stingrays floating and flying and drifting amongst the most wonderful colours. A whole other world beneath our feet. It was a lovely reminder that a place is never only the view that we're looking at. It's also the life in the water, the birds in the trees, all the things we don't notice unless we slow down enough to let them in. Now, if you enjoy these quiet journeys into wild places, please subscribe and come along with me. I'd love to have your company. There's always something to notice when we take the time to look again. Came back down to the beach this morning because yesterday when I was here I was deeply inspired by these beautiful sculpted rocks with green on the top of them. Just loving the forms and the contrast of the green with the shaped rocks, the darker colours of the rocks. Just super beautiful and visually very interesting and inspiring. I think one of the reasons I came back on that second morning was I felt like I had not exhausted all the possibilities of drawing in that magnificent place. The bright green seaweed completely changed the feeling of the rocks that I painted the day before. The pink sandstone was still there, but there was this vivid, intense colour growing on top of it. You know, we need to come to places like this and spend time in places like this because it's a really good reminder that in spite of the fact that the world is pretty insane and scary, frankly, at the moment, but there's also beauty. There's also joy and peace to be found in spending time in nature, not only as a reminder of what we need to fight for and not let go of and not lose on this planet, but also to sustain us. Coming to places like this gives me hope. It gives me hope and strength to keep going, and it reminds me that this connection for me is what it's all about. This connection with the wild and this connection and compassion towards others, other humans and other beings and other places. And we need this. We need places like this, and we need to spend time in places like this to give us that strength to sustain us in the face of all the terrible things that are happening in the world right now. And when I came home, I kept thinking about those green covered rocks. I had made several small sketchbook attempts to understand them. The shapes, the contrast of the green against the darker stone, and the way the seaweed seemed to sit across the rocks like a living pattern. Those drawings became the starting point for 2 paintings in the studio. I didn't want to make a literal representation of what I saw on the beach. What I was trying to capture was the bright living green and the sculptural form of those rocks. And that feeling of the whole place being alive with colour and texture. I talk a lot about drawing and memory, but for me, drawing is a really potent way of triggering memories of the most beautiful places that I'm in. It brings back scent, it brings back sound, it brings back touch. So drawing is an incredibly powerful tool for memory. So when I look at these paintings now, I don't just see those seaweed-covered rocks. I remember the magpies singing in the tree. I remember the sound of the water beneath the jetty. I remember the warmth of those sandstone rocks and the feeling of stress slowly slipping away. These paintings hold that place, and they also hold the act of paying attention to it. We need places like this, not just because they're beautiful, but also because they sustain us in the face of all the intense things that are happening in the world around us. And perhaps that's what these paintings and drawings are for. They remind me of that connection to that wild place and the compassion that we owe to other humans, other beings, and other places on this planet. I hope that in the future these paintings will continue to remind me that beauty is not an escape from responsibility. It's actually one of those things that gives us the strength to take responsibility. And I'd love to know, is there a wild place that's given you hope? Let me know down in the comments. So that's all for this time. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, you carry the wild with you always.